Welcome back to another edition of Stand on Guard. I'm your host, David Krayden. We've got a lot of ground to cover today, especially that GDP number, which I found absolutely fascinating. When we come back, more about how bad Canada is doing under the Trudeau-Carney regime, how much worse it could do, and how Justin Trudeau is spending your money right now, even as I speak. We need political change, but we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like the station. And if you can do so right now, it really helps us beat the YouTube algorithm, and it's basically suppression. A lot of folks watched yesterday's episode on Marxist Mark Carney. A lot of people didn't. It was really hard to find on social media. I wonder why. Is somebody protecting Mark Carney from open evaluation? If you want to know more about Mark Carney, Marxist Mark Carney, it's not just carbon tax Carney, it's Marxist Mark Carney. Have a look at my Substack today. The information is in the description. We will be releasing today a comprehensive assessment of Mark Carney's economic policies, where he comes from, and his corporations that he remains a director of. These are not philanthropic. This is not about charity. Many of these are companies that are designed to make income for him, money. And this is a guy who will not be forthright about where he's getting his money. His wife is also fabulously wealthy. This is a guy who moves in the upper echelons of world globalist society. Don't be fooled for a minute. They understand you or any average Canadian or anybody who's not moving in his circle, not part of his vocabulary. But here's something I heard yesterday on Fox News. This is an incredible pronouncement. Let's listen to this and I'll have more. And by the way, as far as Mark Carney goes, we need to keep the heat on. Very, very much so.
Canada's GDP per capita, when you adjust for inflation since Trudeau took over, is down over 20%. I mean, that is a death knell for a nation. He has destroyed the quality of life for the average Canadian. Housing is unaffordable. Groceries unaffordable. It has been absolutely devastating since he took over. Where in the U.S., like GDP per capita, gone through multiple different administrations with our own inflation problems, is up about the exact same amount.
Did you hear that? GDP down 20%. Every time you hear the Liberals open their mouth during question period, remember question period? That's something we used to do a long time ago when we had Parliament meeting, when we had the House of Commons in session, when the Parliament wasn't prorogued. Yeah, we used to have question period. Maybe it wasn't very useful at times because the Liberal government, people like Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, and Mark Wilkinson, all the same suspects would get up and say, Canada is leading in the G7. Actually, it's dead last on most of these statistics, including the GDP. Now, I'll listen to the rest of this, and I'll tell you how far this guy is dead on.
So things are bad there, and maybe Trump's trying to help him out by exposing what an idiot Trudeau is. But again, I'm a bit perplexed.
Trudeau's also on his way out. Yes. I mean, to be clear, he has lost political favor in his nation because, again, of these. I mean, they've had that immigrant flood. Think about, when they were welcoming immigrants from Afghanistan, and so the Canadians themselves, the Canadian people, I believe, are saying we need to move more to the right. I think the same cultural issues that have hit the United States, Emily, have hit Canada.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing this across the Trump administration's policies. J.D. Vance just went to Europe and said, listen to your voters. Stop pretending that you're this leftist paradise when, frankly, across Europe, you're seeing rejection of those principles. I think we're seeing that in Canada as well. And Trump and others in the Trump administration have a unique ability to call that out and say, you need to listen to your voters because we listened to ours and we had a huge change in the way the politics look in America.
Well, the editorial board wrote about what you brought up with Europe, and I mean, the last week was pretty head-spinning when it comes to the relationship between the United States and Europe.
Trudeau is so far to the left, particularly from a country that has, as you mentioned, such huge energy resources. We've heard nothing but like sort of leftist climate policies out of Trudeau. I think that's part of why he's got President Trump sort of has taken aim at him a little bit, because it's a disparity between on the politics.
Yeah, there's a disparity there. So is this guy right about GDP dropping by 20% in the last decade? Yes. I looked it up in Statistics Canada. You got to piece it together because they don't really want to put it in the headline. But Statistics Canada admits our GDP is dropping in every quarter. Yes. That's something you'll never hear in Question Period. You'll never hear it advertised by Justin Trudeau or Mark Carney. Mark Carney is the guy who's been giving the Liberal government economic advice. He's been giving Chrystia Freeland economic advice for the past decade. That's the result. A GDP that's dropping like a stone. But no problem for Justin Trudeau. Hey, we'll just increase the taxes. We'll make it more difficult for Canadians to live and breathe and eat and drive their cars and heat their homes. Where is he going now? Well, the war in Ukraine is about to be settled by Russia and the United States. So we can stop spending billions of dollars, stop sending billions of dollars into this black hole of Kyiv. I keep calling it that. That's what it is. Volodymyr Zelensky, this president of Ukraine, is a dictator, as Donald Trump labeled him last week. He is corrupt. He's ready now to leave the country. He's looking for asylum because he's saying, hey, I'll resign if it means peace and Ukraine can join NATO. No, nothing happening like that, buddy. Ukraine is not joining NATO. And you are looking for a way out. You're looking for political asylum because you're worried about your back. You're worried that something unpleasant might happen to you, aren't you? So Justin Trudeau to the rescue, folks. He's going to Kyiv. And what? He's pledging army vehicles. What is an army vehicle? Well, it's a LAV, which is a lightly armored vehicle that's not quite a tank, but a little more than a Jeep. And that's what he's offering, more military supplies. And let's listen to Justin Trudeau go on and on and on. Hey, he's got lots of your money to give to Ukraine. No big deal. He'll just keep dispensing it. Even, I have to laugh, though. What do you bet? Trudeau arrives in Ukraine and Zelensky can't be found. Zelensky's fled the country. He's got those Swiss bank accounts. He's got real estate and yachts outside of the country. He just needs some place to call home after Ukraine kicks his ass out of the country. And that's what's going to happen if he's able to get out of the country. But here's Justin Trudeau pledging more assistance to his good buddy Zelensky.
I am announcing Canada will be providing 25 more LAV-3 infantry fighting vehicles to Ukraine. We will be delivering 2 armored combat support vehicles, which Ukrainian forces will be trained on shortly in Germany. Landing systems for F-16s were delivered just 2 months ago, and 4 F-16 flight simulators will be provided in the coming months. And that's on top of the millions of additional rounds of ammunition, components.
Do you believe this guy? What world does he live in? Does he know Ukraine is on the brink of folding? Donald Trump announced yesterday that the peace treaty is on the verge of being finalized. The war is about over. Justin Trudeau can't stop giving your money, our military equipment, from a military that, by the way, is a joke now, not only because we've given our equipment away, because we'll never reach anything like 2% of the GDP in military spending, and because it's now a woke political force where anybody can basically get in, even if, as long as your heart is beating. Come on in. That's how they're getting their recruitment numbers up, because nobody who really believes in the military wants to join Canada's military right now because it's so anti-military. It's a woke force of do-nothings. And Justin Trudeau thinks he's still going to be giving billions of dollars in military equipment to Ukraine, even though the war is just about over. And guess what? Trudeau lost. But this, to me, is just absolutely astounding. Let's have a look at this. How bad are things in Ukraine? Oh, my goodness. The slide on the first slide on the left, on dictatorship, MP Yevhen Shevchenko. He's a member of the Raju party he's from Zelensky's own party, was jailed for even suggesting that it might be time for peace talks. Yeah, Zelensky will put you in irons and put you in jail if you even suggest it's time for peace, even though they haven't got a military left. A million Ukrainians dead in this war. Finally, the real numbers are being reported by the mainstream media. They pretended for years it was minimal. Ukraine was still a fighting force. It has totally been exhausted. What else? One day they'll bring him back to Ukraine in a cage along with everyone from his inner circle who participated in all of this. That's the prediction for Zelensky. Zelensky's former advisor, Arestovich, said today, "You who are still supporting Zelensky, do you realize that they'll soon publish the info regarding how much was stolen by Zelensky's government and him personally? You will find out such things, such surprises that you can't even imagine." We have been lied to now for 3 years about when this war actually started, what this war is actually about, and who's been winning the war for the last 3 years, and how this is going to end very badly. Arestovich resigned from his post and was driven out of Ukraine after disclosing the fact that Ukraine was responsible for a Russian Kh-22 missile hitting civilian buildings on January 14th, 2023. In Dnipropetrovsk. I hope I said that right. Probably not. And remember, I always say, I have Ukrainian ancestry. But this is a dumb war. It's a stupid war. It's got to end. And it's just something that Justin Trudeau has used to hang on to power. That's all it really comes down to. I want to show you something, and I'll get back to the Ukraine thing in a minute, but we've got to shift for a second to this fascinating interview between the inimitable Vasi Capellos, the favorite of YouTubers around the world, especially Canada, who just can't get enough of Vasi. Here she is interviewing Liberal leadership candidate Karina Gould, who is also, of course, the Liberal or the government House leader. And yes, as she says in this interview, I'm also a member of Parliament. Well, you're also the member of Parliament and the government House leader who invited a former Nazi soldier to come to the House of Commons, sit in the gallery, and listen to, Ukrainian President Zelensky drone on. Well, everybody got up and gave Yaroslav Hunka, the former Waffen-SS member, whose regiment has been accused of war crimes, a standing ovation. That's Karina Gould. And when it all turned bad for Karina, the following day, what did she say? What did she do? Hey, folks, she rises in the House of Commons on the Monday following this disaster, when this has all been reported. And I was the first Canadian to report this, by the way, in the post-millennial. She gets up on Monday and declares, we should just get rid of all of the record here. We should redact it all, that this ever happened, that I and Trudeau and the Speaker ever invited this former Waffen-SS soldier to come to the House of Commons and sit in the gallery. We should just pretend it never happened. Censor it from the Hansard, as we call the official record of parliamentary proceedings. Get rid of it. thankfully, there were some sane voices in the Conservative Party that says, hey, that sounds positively Orwellian. That sounds like we're just pretending something never happened. We're just amending the historical record like it never was. Yeah, that's about what 1984 is all about. The main character's job is to eradicate the historical record or to change it, to make things that happen never happen, and to make things that never did happen happen. That's what he does. And that's what Karina Gould is all about. But listen to her talk about she doesn't want an election.
Win and ultimately do become the next leader of the party, the next prime minister. Will you go straight to an election?
Oh, well, I am going to see where the country is at that moment in time, because if we are in the midst of a trade war with the United States, we need to make sure that the entire energy of the government is focused on defending Canada and defending Canadians. So I'm going to want to see where we are on March 10th.
What do you mean, I guess, by trade war? Because it sort of already feels like we're on the precipice of one. And in the opposition's argument, and some of your rivals actually in the race have seemed to intimate that if there is that kind of force that we're up against, that the government will need a very clear mandate, whatever that government is, hence the desire to see an election sooner rather than later. Do you not share that belief?
My belief and where I stand on this is, as the government, we need to do what is in the best interest of Canadians. And, the 30-day reprieve on the threat from Trump with regards to tariffs is going to be ending.
When has Karina Gould ever done anything in her political career, that's in the best interests of Canadians? It's always in the best interests of Karina Gould, the Liberal Party, and the Trudeau government. That's the only three things she's ever worked for. Never the interests of Canadians.
In a matter of days. And so I think we need to understand. And if we do have 25% tariffs slapped across the board, I think the energy of the country is best focused on working to ensure that we get those tariffs removed. But let's see where we are on March 10th. I think that is the responsible thing to do, and to ensure that, whatever I do as Prime Minister, it is always with the best interests of Canada and Canadians in mind.
But Canadians will not have voted for you as Prime Minister, right? Liberals.
Well,
Canadians who are liberals.
Well, I was voted in. I have a seat in the House of Commons. Can you imagine this person being the prime minister even for a day? I mean, listen to the pomposity here. She's going to make the decisions here, yeah. And I have a seat in the House of Commons.
I am an elected member of Parliament.
Yes, but as Prime Minister, the Liberals will have put you in that position, not Canadians writ large. And yet you will be tasked with, defending all of them, which is like what I think is the impetus behind the call for an election sooner rather than later.
Well, so as I mentioned, I do have a seat in the House of Commons, so I can actually sit there when I become Prime Minister. But look, there will be an election at some point this year, right? We have a fixed election date in October. So whether that is, an election that is called earlier or until then, the decision that I will make as Prime Minister is going to be about defending Canada. If we need to have a massive support program for Canadians because we have hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their job, or we need to ensure businesses can keep their doors open so that when we do win a potential trade war, Canadians have good jobs to go back to, that's the decision that I'm going to make at the time. So, I'm not going to say that I'm going to call an early election or wait until later, until I know exactly where we stand on March 10th.
But even, for example, if you have to introduce something like that massive support project, that's something that is in line with the likes of which we had seen during the COVID pandemic, do you not need a mandate supported by all Canadians versus just those in your party?
Well, we would need the support of an opposition party as well, because we still have.
Jagmeet Singh in the NDP? Anybody? Is that what she's referring to here? Yes. So you can bet she's talking the
minority government in Ottawa. So, as I said, Vashi, I don't think it's right for me to make that decision right now when we really need to see where we are on March 10th. And we need to know what it is that Canadians need in that time as well. So, I'm going to make sure that Canadians have the support that they need, that the government is focused on delivering for Canada.
Oh, shut up. I'm just so tired of listening to her. So she said some very alarming things here. First of all, she knows very well that, yes, there's legislation to have an election every 4 years. The Constitution, which would trump that legislation, actually says 5 years. A government can go for 5 years. The Liberals have already admitted this. They've already talked about this. Karina Gould knows this. She's playing games. She's playing word games. Do you think she wants a trade war? She's already saying, hey, it feels like we're in a trade war right now. It's just going to get better. She wants a trade war because that will give her an opportunity and the Liberal Party to run against Donald Trump. I've said this every day now for the last 3 months. This is what they're up to. They want a trade war. They'll do better running against Donald Trump on an anti-American platform than they ever will running against Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, who are running on a Canada First platform. Now, what is she saying here? She wants massive spending. Yeah. COVID too. This is what she wants to do. Massive spending on more social programs, more inflationary spending, more get out of jail cards for everybody. This is what the Liberals are imagining. They want a trade war so they can spend your money like drunken sailors again. They want to be able to have the freedom and the justification to spend money like there's no tomorrow. That's why they want a trade war. They want the tariff because it's about political power for them. I've said that and said that. That is what they're up to. Thank God, we had Pierre Poilievre last week. I never played this because remember I played the clip last week of our heritage minister, Pascal Saint-Onge, announcing that we should, even though we're dead last in the G7 on every economic indicator, we should be doubling the budget for CBC and not even asking Parliament if it's okay. Just go ahead and do it, she says, because it's the right thing to do. Like hell, don't you spend another cent on CBC. Let's defund it. Now, is Pierre Poilievre still talking that language? Yes, thank God. Listen to this.
We have to cut waste and mismanagement in this country. After 10 years of the Carney-Trudeau Liberals, they've increased government spending by 80%. They've increased the debt by over 100%. And much of it has gone to waste. For example, almost nobody watches CBC television. They have among the worst ratings of any network. And yet Trudeau gives them billions more. We're going to cut wasteful spending, not just there, but across the government to bring down inflation, deficits, and taxes.
Keep saying defund the CBC, Mr. Poilievre. You need to hear that. Canadians get excited when they hear that because it's time to say bye-bye to $1.3 billion and potentially $2.6 billion going to the CBC. It's over. Now, I've reached out to Ruby Dhalla, the now Liberal leadership candidate who was kicked out of the Liberal leadership race because of some bad donations. First of all, it was Indian interference from the government of India or people in India. That changed overnight as the Liberals leaked that story first to Globe and Mail. That didn't seem to go anywhere. So then they leaked the next story to CBC. While Ruby Dhalla was doing a broadcast, they leaked the story to CBC saying she's out on financial irregularities. I've reached out to Ruby Dhalla to get her on the show to talk about this, not because I'm supporting Ruby Dhalla for Liberal leadership or I'm ever going to support the Liberal Party, but I do support the right of Canadians to run in leadership contests without being kicked out for ridiculous reasons because they might beat the person the party's already selected to be the leader, they've already anointed Mark Carney. It's a coronation. They don't want any interference from Ruby Dhalla, who's actually far to the right of Mark Carney. I'm a lot more sensible to listen to. But let's listen to this.
Let's do this. Thank you. 3 minutes before I'm supposed to be joining this call, I've just received this message from one of the most prominent reporters in our country. They are going to disqualify you for campaign irregularities and not for foreign influence. The past 48 hours have been very difficult. Please do not disqualify me. It will not send the right message for our party to immigrants and for young people and women in our country. I know that my brother's with me because it's June 30th. His angel number is 333. Yeah. They had a meeting with me at 1:30. And I said, regardless of what you think of me, just think about the other cultural communities in our country and women and young people. You're going to send the wrong message. They only want to talk about diversity. They only want to talk about representation of women. But when it comes down to it, they want to silence you and they want to disqualify you. They did not want me to go on to that debate stage in Montreal. They certainly did not want me on that ballot. And the Liberal Party of Canada wanted to complete the coronation of Mark Carney.
You bet they did. They wanted to complete the coronation of Mark Carney. I hope she goes to those debates and raises a little bit of hell, because the Liberal Party is arrogant enough. The Liberal Party thinks they can do whatever it wants to do. It can put Mark Carney up there and make him prime minister without a single vote from Canadians making him prime minister. Electing somebody as the leader of the Liberal Party is a lot different than electing a person as the Prime Minister of Canada. They don't want an open contest at all. Now, I want to get back to Ukraine here for a second, because it shows you how irrelevant Justin Trudeau has become. Last week, Donald Trump talked about cutting in half the military budgets of the superpowers, or the powers, whatever you want to call them anymore. The great powers again? I don't know if we have superpowers anymore. But he was talking, of course, about the United States, Russia, and China, cutting their military budgets in half and ending the war in Ukraine. Listen to what former UN weapons inspector Scott Ritter had to say about this, because I've been wanting to show this one to you for a couple of days now, and it keeps getting put aside. But this is very profound.
The military, industrial, congressional complex. I mean, that is an enormous rock that Trump would have to move, isn't it?
It is, except that we have this thing called DOGE that's going in and exposing corruption and governmental inefficiencies. And I think what you're going to see soon is, as the Pentagon is audited, and the amount of money that is wasted and lost and misappropriated, which will run into, in the grand scheme of things, trillions of dollars, and the corruption of Congress in facilitating payments to entities that do nothing, that Trump is going to, castrate the military industrial congressional complex and, make them, virtually powerless. Trump will need the help of the American people on this, but I think this is an issue that will resonate with the American people. And one of the things I wrote about in the
American people have just been acclimated for 4 generations into believing we need to spend more money on defense. We need to have enough nuclear weapons to blow the world up 100 times.
Sure, and they were also acclimated on the need for foreign policy to go out and help the world. But as soon as USAID was exposed as nothing more than a regime change entity and corrupted that, look how the mindset has changed dramatically. And I guarantee you that when the corruption of the Pentagon and the corruption of the nuclear weapons establishment and the linkage of that corruption to Congress is exposed, that the American people will have a come again moment. And at that point in time, will be more susceptible into.
This is almost, as you said in your piece that piqued my interest over the weekend, a dream come true.
It's 100% a dream come true. It's revolutionary. I mean, maybe that's an overused term in some corners, but if you don't understand what's happening in America today, the revolution that is taking place, the Trump revolution, then you're just totally out of touch. He has dramatically transformed the way things work. He spent 4 years learning the hard way about how the establishment will undermine him and oppose him and seek to undercut everything he tries to do. That he spent 4 years surviving the lawfare being waged against him by the establishment. He's now the president, and he has identified every piece of the puzzle that needs to be eliminated, and he's in the process of eliminating them. And this is revolutionary. And as I believe, he will successfully remove the impediments to strategic disarmament. The first thing, though, is he has to get the Russians to play ball. This is why this meeting in Riyadh tomorrow is so important. and it would be indicative of the creation of a new alliance. And the enemy isn't Nazi Germany. The enemy is the old concepts of how the world was to be divided, militarism, that we solve everything through increased defense budgets and military confrontation. I think the new direction will be that we're looking for economic competition where necessary, economic cooperation where possible, but to de-emphasize military on military engagements. Again, why Trump is talking about 50% reductions in the military. When I raised this to the gentleman that I was interviewing, I thought I would have gotten cold water thrown in my face, and he said, no, this is actually a distinct possibility.
Yes, it's a distinct. Do we need Doge in Canada?
This is the chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
You can't handle the truth. Resolve to resist.
When I come back, a few concluding remarks. Yes, please have a look at our store. I think we've got some of the best merchandise available on the market today. I'm proud of it. I'm proud to say, have a look at the store. This is stuff you can use to promote the policies you believe in. Let's continue to resolve to resist. Got some interviews coming up this week and the next. I'm very excited about. We're going to keep giving you all the news you need to know. And I tell you this, we're going to keep our finger on these stories. I talked about what's happening in Ukraine, what's happening with Mark Carney trying to essentially move into the prime minister's house, what's happening with people who say no. Thanks for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow at 10 o'clock.